Your neighbor is going to walk past your yard in August and stop dead in their tracks. Not because you spent more money than them, not because you worked harder than them, but because you made one smart decision this May that they didn't. 11 perennials, 1 month. A yard so packed with color, so alive, so completely transformed that the people who used to drive past without looking now slow down just to stare. These plants spread on their own. They come back every single year. They multiply for free while you're sitting on your porch with a glass of iced tea. And if you miss May, you don't just lose a few weeks, you lose the entire growing season. So let's not waste another second. Here is exactly what to plant right now. Plant 1, Russian sage. Most people walk through a garden center in May, see this plant sitting in a small pot looking thin and unimpressive, and walk right past it. 6 months later, those same people drive past a yard with a 4-foot-tall cloud of silver and lavender swaying in the August heat, and they have absolutely no idea they just passed on the most spectacular drought-proof perennial available to American gardeners. If you're enjoying this deep dive into the story, hit the subscribe button and let us know in the comments from where in the world you are watching from today. Perovskia atriplycifolia is hardy in USDA zones 4 through 9, covering nearly every gardening region in the continental United States. Tall, airy stems reach 3 to 4 feet, with silver-gray aromatic foliage and clouds of small lavender-blue flowers that bloom from midsummer all the way through first frost. That bloom window is the longest of any perennial on this list, and it happens during the exact weeks when most American gardens look exhausted, brown, and finished for the year. The aromatic oils in the foliage are strong enough that deer and rabbits walk right past Russian sage without considering it food. They evaluate plants by scent before contact, and Russian sage fails their test before they ever get close enough to take a bite. That problem in your yard where deer have eaten 3 different perennials down to stubs over the last 2 summers, that problem ends with one May planting decision. Russian sage planted in rich, heavily amended garden soil grows floppy, weak, and falls open in the middle by midsummer. Russian sage planted in poor, dry, neglected, gravelly soil stands tall, blooms harder, and looks exactly like the photographs that made you want to grow it in the first place. Planted in the spot you've already given up on. That is not settling for less. That is matching the plant to the conditions where it actually thrives. It spreads through underground rhizomes and self-seeds modestly around the parent plant. Within 3 seasons, one original planting becomes a generous drift. For best results, choose Little Spire for compact 2-foot growth perfect for smaller borders, or Denim and Lace for sturdier stems that resist flopping completely. Tell me in the comments right now. Do you have a hot, dry spot in your yard that has cooked every plant you've put there? A spot near the driveway, along a south-facing wall, or in full sun where nothing seems to last past July? Because almost every answer to that problem is on this list today. Drop it below. I read every single one. Plant 2, Salvia. If you have ever wished a plant would just keep blooming and stop forcing you to deadhead it every weekend like a part-time job, this is the conversation you needed to have before you bought another perennial. Salvia nemorosa is hardy in USDA zones 4 through 8. Spiky vertical flower spires in deep violet purple, rich pink, soft lavender, and pure white standing 18 to 24 inches above neat clumps of aromatic green foliage. The vertical structure of those flower spires is exactly what most perennial borders are missing. Most plants mound. Most plants spread horizontally. Salvia stands up straight and creates the structural contrast that makes every other plant in the bed look intentional. The bloom strategy is what separates this plant from almost everything else. The first flush comes in late May and early June and lasts about 3 weeks. Cut it back hard immediately after that first flush ends, all the way down to the basal foliage. Within 2 to 3 weeks, it pushes a complete second wave of flowers that carries straight through to August. In milder zones, a third light flush often arrives in early fall. That is 3 bloom seasons from one plant in a single year, and the only thing required from you is one cut with a pair of shears. Pollinators work salvia constantly all season long. Bumblebees fit perfectly inside those tubular individual flowers. Hummingbirds visit reliably throughout the bloom window. Native solitary bees that you may not even recognize show up in significant numbers. While Salvia is in your garden, it is running a pollination program that benefits every flowering plant and every vegetable within a quarter-mile of your yard. For cultivars that perform reliably across American zones, Caradonna delivers near-black stems with deep violet flowers and is one of the most photographed perennials in modern American garden design for very good reason. May Night produces deep purple flowers and was named Perennial Plant of the Year, an industry award that means horticultural professionals tested it across multiple regions and could not find a weak performance. 2 plants in, and I want to ask you something honest. How much money have you spent at the garden center over the last 3 Mays replacing things that died before August? Add it up. If this channel saves you even a third of that this year, subscribing is the easiest free decision you make in the next 30 seconds. Hit subscribe right now. Do it before we go one plant further. Plant 3, Baptisia, false indigo. This is the plant that experienced American gardeners install once and then point to with quiet satisfaction 20 years later, when it is still performing better than anything they have planted since. Baptisia australis is hardy in USDA zones 3 through 9, one of the widest ranges of any perennial on this list. Tall spires of pea-shaped flowers in deep indigo blue, soft yellow, rich purple, creamy white, and bicolors that look almost painted, blooming for 3 to 4 weeks in late spring on plants that reach 3 to 4 feet tall and equally wide once mature. Here is what makes Baptisia different from almost everything else in American gardens. The taproot grows 8 to 10 feet deep into the soil. That root depth is precisely why this plant requires zero supplemental watering once established, why it survives droughts that kill everything else in the bed, and why it lives 50 years in the same location without dividing, transplanting, or replacing. You plant it once in May, and the same plant is still performing for the next homeowner decades from now. That is not a flowering perennial. That is a permanent fixture in your landscape. The one consideration that genuinely matters with Baptisia: choose your location carefully. That deep taproot makes mature plants extremely difficult to move. The plant you put in the ground this May is the plant that will be there in the same spot for the rest of your time in that house. Pick a spot with full sun, average drainage, and enough room for a 4-foot mature plant, and the rest takes care of itself permanently. After flowering finishes, Baptisia produces dramatic seed pods that turn charcoal black in late summer and rattle audibly in autumn wind. Florists buy those seed pods for $4 to $6 per stem for dried fall arrangements, and established Baptisia produces dozens of pods every year. You are growing a perennial that pays its own value back in cut material every fall. For cultivars, look for Cherry's Jubilee for raspberry red and yellow bicolor flowers, or Decadence Blueberry Sundae for compact 3-foot growth with deep blue flowers, the best choice for smaller American suburban yards where space is limited. Plant 4, Shasta Daisy. Shasta daisies grow along American roadsides from Maine to Oregon. You have driven past them your entire life, and people still walk into garden centers every May and pay $10 per pot for something that has been growing wild and free along every highway in this country for over a century. That stops right now. Leucanthemum X Superbum is hardy in USDA zones 4 through 9. Bright white petals radiating around a sunny golden yellow center. The most universally recognized flower shape in the world, rendered in a perennial that returns reliably every single year and spreads outward into a substantial colony with absolutely no effort from you. It blooms from June through September, 3 full months of cheerful color during the exact period when American gardens face their most intense heat, drought, and stress. While other plants are wilting, browning, and dropping flowers prematurely in July and August, Shasta daisies stand straight up and keep producing fresh blooms week after week. They were specifically bred by Luther Burbank in California to handle American summer conditions, and that breeding heritage shows up in performance every single year. It spreads 2 ways simultaneously. The clump expands outward each season as new shoots emerge around the original planting. Mature clumps drop seeds that germinate into new plants the following spring. By year 4, one original Shasta daisy becomes a sweeping drift you never planted, never watered beyond establishment, and never paid for beyond that one purchase in May. Every 3 to 4 years, divide the expanding clump in early spring or fall. One mature plant yields 6 to 8 divisions. At nursery prices of $12 to $15 per Shasta daisy, one original plant produces over $80 in free plants from a single morning with a garden fork. That is real money from a shovel and 20 minutes of your time. Cut Shasta daisies brought indoors last 7 to 10 days in a vase, longer than almost any other garden flower at any price point. For any gardener who enjoys fresh-cut arrangements at home, this perennial pays for itself in eliminated grocery store flower purchases in the first season alone. For best performance, choose Becky for proven heat tolerance across the American South, or Snowcap for compact 18-inch growth. Picture that moment in late July when most yards in your neighborhood look tired and brown, and yours has a 4-foot-wide drift of pure white daisies catching afternoon light. That is what this channel is actually about. Not just plants, but the moments that happen because of the right plants in the right place. Subscribe right now if you are not already. Don't let this channel disappear on you. Plant 5, Sedum Autumn Joy. Most perennials have one peak moment, 2 weeks of glory, and then they disappear into the background until the next spring. This one has 4 distinct seasons of visual interest from a single planting, and that is genuinely rare in any American garden at any budget level. Sedum Autumn Joy is hardy in USDA zones 3 through 10, the widest hardiness range of any plant on this list. There is almost no American climate where this plant does not perform reliably year after year. Spring brings emerging rosettes of thick, succulent blue-green foliage that look like tiny cabbage plants pushing up through the soil. By June, the plant has developed into mounds of attractive foliage that hold structure perfectly even before any flowers appear. In late summer, broccoli-like flower heads emerge in soft pink. Through September and October, those flower heads deepen progressively to rose pink, then to copper, then to rich rust red. After the first hard frost, the dried flower heads stand through winter, holding their structure even under snow, providing visual interest in your garden through January when nothing else is performing. That is 4 full seasons from one plant: spring foliage interest, summer structural mounds, fall color progression, winter dried structure. Almost nothing else in the perennial world delivers that range from a single planting at any price. The pollinator activity on Autumn Joy in September and October is genuinely extraordinary. Late-season bees, butterflies, and beneficial flies cover the flower heads completely during peak bloom. By that time of year, most American gardens have lost their flowers, and pollinators are struggling to find late-season nectar sources. Your sedum becomes one of the most important food sources in your entire neighborhood for those final weeks before frost. It tolerates drought, heat, poor soil, and complete neglect with absolutely no complaint. The thick, succulent leaves store water internally, so the plant supplies itself when rain stops. While your neighbor is dragging hoses across their yard in August, your sedum is pulling water from its own internal reserves and looking better for it. One technique that genuinely matters with this plant: in late May or early June, cut the entire plant back by half. Just shear it down with hedge clippers. This is called the Chelsea chop, and it produces shorter, sturdier stems that never flop open in the center the way unpinched plants do. Skip this step, and you get a plant that splits open by September. Do it once, and you get a perfect dome of fall color that holds shape through every storm. Tell me right now, what is the single worst soil spot in your yard? The dry, rocky, neglected corner where everything has died. Tell me what state you are gardening in and what you have already tried, because I guarantee at least 4 plants on this list were specifically built for exactly that condition. Drop it below. Plant 6, Coral Bells, Heuchera. If you have areas of your yard that get morning sun and afternoon shade, or dappled light all day under trees, this is the plant that turns those previously challenging spots into the most photographed corners of your entire garden. Heuchera is hardy in USDA zones 4 through 9. The flowers are delicate sprays of small bell-shaped blooms on tall, thin stems in pink, red, white, and coral. But here is what makes coral bells truly extraordinary: the foliage. Modern Heuchera cultivars produce leaves in colors that genuinely look unreal. Deep burgundy purple that turns nearly black in cool weather, vivid lime green that glows in shaded spots, rich caramel orange, silver-veined leaves that catch every ray of available light, peach, coral, plum, and chocolate brown. That foliage is evergreen in zones 6 and warmer, semi-evergreen in zones 4 and 5. Your garden has structure and color through every single month of the year, including the dead of winter, when virtually nothing else is contributing visually. Coral bells solve the most consistent design problem in American shade gardens, the green wall problem. Most shade plants are some shade of green. Hostas are green, ferns are green, ground covers are green. Coral bells break that monotony with rich foliage colors that make every surrounding green plant look more intentional and more designed. Look for obsidian for nearly black foliage that provides dramatic contrast, caramel for warm orange tones that glow in afternoon light, or lime marmalade for chartreuse green that brightens shaded corners better than any flower could. Every 3 years in early spring, lift the entire plant, divide the crown into 3 or 4 pieces, and replant. This division process keeps the plant vigorous and prevents the woody crown buildup that causes older heuchera plants to heave out of the soil during winter freezes. One simple maintenance task every 3 years, and the plant performs beautifully for decades. 6 plants in, and I want to say something to you directly. If you have learned even one new thing in the last few minutes that your garden needed, do me one favor before plant number 7. Subscribe right now. Not at the end of the video, now. Because the gardeners who subscribe in the middle of a video are the ones whose yards look completely different 2 seasons from now. Be that gardener. Plant 7, hardy hibiscus. Most American gardeners assume hibiscus is a tropical plant that you have to buy in May, baby through summer, and watch die at the first frost. That assumption is precisely why most people miss out on the single most spectacular flowering perennial available in this country. Hibiscus moschutos and its modern hybrids are hardy in USDA zones 4 through 9, dying completely back to the ground every winter and pushing up brand new growth every May. The flowers are dinner plate sized, genuinely 8 to 12 inches across in some modern cultivars, in vivid red, deep pink, pure white, and bicolors with contrasting eye zones. Those flowers look like they belong in Hawaii, and they are blooming in Zone 4 Minnesota and Zone 5 New England every single August reliably. The one trait that catches new hibiscus growers off guard, hardy hibiscus emerges late. Other perennials are pushing up new growth in April. Hardy hibiscus might not show a single shoot above the soil until late May or early June. Many American gardeners have dug up perfectly healthy hibiscus plants in May because they assume the plants died over winter. Mark the location with a stake the previous fall and trust the timeline. Once it does emerge, it grows extraordinarily fast, gaining 6 to 8 feet of height before August bloom. Each individual flower lasts only 1 day, which sounds disappointing until you understand what is actually happening. The plant produces dozens of new buds simultaneously, opening fresh flowers every single morning for 6 to 8 consecutive weeks. You are not getting a brief 2-week show. You're getting 2 months of continuous fresh dinner plate flowers from June through September. If you find this story engaging, please take a moment to subscribe and enable notifications. It helps us continue producing in-depth content like this. Hummingbirds and large butterflies find hardy hibiscus from impressive distances. The flowers are biologically engineered for large pollinators, and the show in the garden when a swallowtail butterfly visits a 12-inch flower is genuinely worth pulling a chair into the yard to watch. For cultivars that perform reliably, Summerific Berry Awesome delivers vivid pink with deep purple eyes on compact plants. Midnight Marvel produces near-black foliage with brilliant red flowers, the most photographed hardy hibiscus in modern American gardening. Plant 8, Agastache, Hyssop. There is one plant on this list that hummingbirds will find within 24 hours of installation. Not a week, not a few days, 24 hours. They have an internal map of nectar sources that updates faster than any phone app, and Agastache enters that map immediately. Agastache is hardy in USDA zones 5 through 10. Tall flower spires in vivid orange, hot coral, deep purple, soft pink, and rich blue rising 2 to 4 feet above aromatic licorice-scented foliage. Those flower spires bloom continuously from June all the way through frost. One of the longest bloom windows of any perennial available to American gardeners, and during the exact weeks when hummingbirds are most actively feeding to fuel migration. The aromatic licorice mint scent of the foliage repels deer and rabbits with the same effectiveness as catmint or Russian sage. 3 problems solved by one plant: spectacular flowers, hummingbird magnet, deer and rabbit resistance. That is exceptional return from one May planting decision. Agastache requires excellent drainage. This is non-negotiable. Heavy wet clay soil will kill this plant faster than any other condition. Plant it on slopes, in raised beds, in gravel gardens, or in soil heavily amended with coarse sand. Get the drainage right, and the plant performs spectacularly for years. Get it wrong, and you replace the plant every spring. This single drainage requirement is the difference between gardeners who think Agastache is unreliable and gardeners who consider it one of the best perennials they have ever planted. Look for Blue Fortune for soft blue-purple flowers and exceptional cold hardiness, or Kudos Coral for vivid coral pink on compact 18-inch plants. Crush a leaf between your fingers and the licorice scent is genuinely strong, sweet, and pleasant. Some gardeners brew the leaves as tea. Others use them in cooking the way mint or basil get used. You are growing a wildlife magnet, a deer-resistant ornamental, and a functional culinary herb in the same plant. Plant 9, Perennial Geranium Rozanne. This single cultivar is so dramatically better than every other geranium available to American gardeners that it earned its own dedicated spot on this list. Rozanne is not just another perennial. Rozanne is a transformation of what perennial geraniums are capable of doing. Geranium Rozanne is hardy in USDA zones 5 through 8. Blooms continuously from late May through hard frost. Every single week, a fresh wave of vivid violet-blue flowers with white centers covering the plant in numbers that make every other long-blooming perennial look like a part-time worker by comparison. The Royal Horticultural Society named it Plant of the Centenary in 2013, beating 200 candidates spanning 100 years of plant introductions. That is not a marketing claim. That is industry consensus from people who evaluate plants for a living. It mounds to about 18 inches tall and spreads to 3 feet wide, weaving naturally between other plants without smothering them. Rozanne is the perennial that landscape designers reach for when they need to fill gaps in midsummer borders, soften hard edges, and provide reliable color from one planting to another. Professionals who charge serious money for design work install Rozanne constantly because nothing else delivers comparable performance with comparable reliability. The maintenance is genuinely minimal. In late June or early July, when the plant looks tired after its first major flush, shear it back by 1/3. Within 2 weeks, it pushes a complete fresh round of foliage and flowers that carries straight through to October. Rozanne is sterile, meaning it produces no viable seeds and channels all its energy into producing more flowers instead of producing seed pods. That is precisely why it blooms longer than any other perennial geranium. Most plants stop blooming once they set seed. Rozanne has nothing to set, so it just keeps blooming until frost finally stops it. It tolerates partial shade beautifully, performing well in spots that get 4 to 6 hours of direct sun and afternoon shade. That makes it one of the few continuously blooming perennials available for the partially shaded conditions present in most established American suburban yards. If you have made it 9 plants deep into this video, you are serious about this. Subscribe right now, hit the bell, and let the next video find you. The gardeners who subscribe today are the ones whose yards look completely different by this time next year. Be one of them. Plant 10, Butterfly Weed. Asclepias tuberosa. If you have ever wanted to plant a perennial that genuinely contributes to monarch butterfly survival, not just provides nectar for adults, but actually serves as a host plant for caterpillars, this is the single most important plant on this entire list. Asclepias tuberosa is hardy in USDA zones 3 through 9. Vivid orange flat-topped flower clusters glowing in summer sun on plants that reach 18 to 24 inches tall. The orange is genuinely electric, almost neon, and pollinators find it from astonishing distances within hours of opening. Monarch butterflies lay their eggs exclusively on milkweed species, no other plants. The hatching caterpillars feed only on milkweed leaves before forming chrysalises and emerging as the next generation of butterflies that continue migration. Without milkweed in American gardens, monarch populations cannot reproduce. Asclepias tuberosa is one of the easiest, most beautiful, and most reliably available milkweed species for American home gardens. Growing it is direct, measurable, documented support for a species in serious population decline. The deep taproot of butterfly weed makes it extraordinarily drought-tolerant once established. That same taproot makes mature plants difficult to transplant, so choose your location carefully at planting. Full sun, well-drained soil, and adequate space for the mature size, and you will not need to move it. The plant takes care of itself for decades. It emerges late in spring, similar to hardy hibiscus, often not appearing until late May or early June, even in warm zones. Mark the location and trust the timeline. Once it does emerge, it grows quickly, blooms for 6 to 8 weeks in midsummer, and produces interesting seed pods in fall that split open to release silky parachute seeds that drift on the autumn wind. Butterfly weed is genuinely deer-resistant. The milky sap is mildly toxic and bitter, and deer have learned to leave it completely alone. Plant it confidently in areas with heavy deer pressure where you have given up trying to grow other flowering perennials. Plant 11, Joe-Pye weed. Every plant on this list earns its place from May through August. This one earns its place specifically in late August and September, when it transforms from a tall green presence in the back of the border into a 6-foot-tall monument covered in dusty pink flower clouds that butterflies cannot resist. Eutrochium purpureum is hardy in USDA zones 3 through 9, tall, sturdy stems reaching 5 to 7 feet in mature plants topped with massive domed clusters of small, dusty pink to mauve flowers that bloom from late summer into early fall. Those flower heads can measure 8 to 12 inches across on established plants, and the visual impact in a back-of-border position is genuinely architectural. The pollinator activity on flowering Joe-Pye weed is among the most spectacular sights in any American garden. Tiger swallowtails, monarchs, painted ladies, fritillaries, and skippers cover the flower heads simultaneously during peak bloom. A single flowering Joe-Pye weed can host 20 or more butterflies at once on a sunny September afternoon. That is not a flowering perennial. That is a butterfly habitat installed permanently in your back garden. For smaller American suburban yards where 7-foot plants feel oversized, choose Little Joe for compact 4-foot growth that delivers the same flower show on a more manageable scale, or Baby Joe for 3-foot growth perfect for smaller borders. Joe-Pye weed prefers consistent moisture and tolerates clay soil better than almost any other tall perennial available to American gardeners. That low spot in your yard that stays wet after rain, the area where most plants struggle with too much water, this is the plant that solves that problem permanently. You stop fighting that spot and start planting into it. When a monarch butterfly lands on your Joe-Pye weed in September, when you are sitting on your porch in a light jacket because the mornings are cool now, watching that migration pause in your yard before continuing south, that is what every plant on this list was building toward. Every decision you made this May, every plant you put in the ground, that moment right there is the payoff. Every plant on this list could technically be purchased in June or July. So why does May matter so much? Because of what happens underground before you see anything happening above ground. In May, soil temperatures across most American growing zones sit between 55 and 70 degrees Fahrenheit. That is the precise biological window where perennial root systems establish at maximum efficiency, building the deep anchoring structure that determines everything about long-term performance. Plant in May, and roots have 8 to 10 weeks to establish before peak summer heat arrives in late July and August. 8 to 10 weeks of optimal soil temperature, adequate spring rainfall, and low-stress establishment that builds resilience into the plant at its most fundamental level. Miss that window. Plant in late June or July, and those same roots are trying to establish in hot, dry, stressed soil while simultaneously supporting a plant already trying to grow and bloom above ground. The energy demand splits, the establishment slows, the plant survives, but never reaches its full first-year potential. Every plant on this list installed in May will spread further, bloom more reliably, and establish more permanently than the identical plant put in the ground 6 weeks later. May is not a calendar preference. It is a biological window with a closing date, and that window is open right now. Before you plant anything, 4 rules determine whether your May effort succeeds or struggles. Rule 1. Test drainage before you dig a single hole. Poor drainage kills more spreading perennials than any other condition combined. Dig a hole 12 inches deep, fill it completely with water. If that water has not drained within 1 hour, you have a drainage problem that will undermine every plant on this list. Fix it with coarse sand and compost worked deeply into the soil, or build a raised planting area above grade. Do this once correctly, and it permanently changes what your soil supports. Rule 2. Plant slightly higher than soil grade. New perennials should sit with the crown of the plant, the spot where stems meet roots, at or slightly above the surrounding soil level. Burying the crown causes rot. This single mistake kills more new perennials in their first year than any pest or disease. Rule 3. Water deeply and infrequently during establishment. The instinct is to water lightly every day. The correct approach is to water deeply once or twice per week during the first 8 weeks. Deep watering forces roots to grow down toward moisture, building the deep root structure that determines long-term drought tolerance. Light, frequent watering builds shallow roots that fail at the first dry spell. Rule 4. Mulch correctly. 2 to 3 inches of bark mulch around new plants conserves moisture, regulates soil temperature, and suppresses weeds during establishment. Keep mulch pulled back 2 inches from the plant stem itself. Mulch piled against stems holds moisture against bark and causes rot. You just spent the last several minutes learning 11 plants that will change what your yard looks like by August and keep transforming it for years to come without you starting over every May. That is not a gardening video. That is a plan. A real, specific, actionable plan for a yard that takes care of itself and rewards you more with every passing season. If this gave you even one plant you are putting in the ground this May, subscribe right now. Next week we go just as deep, and the week after that. Every single week, real plant knowledge, real zone-specific guidance, real information that saves you money and changes how your outdoor space performs. The gardeners who subscribed at the beginning of this video are already ahead. Join them right now. Before you go, drop one comment below. Tell me which plant from this list you are putting in the ground first this May, and tell me what zone or what state you are gardening in. I read every single comment. I respond to as many as I can, and your answers directly shape the videos I make next. This is your garden. This is your season. May is open right now. Go plant something. Thank you for watching. For more detailed historical breakdowns, check out the other videos on your screen now, and don't forget to subscribe.